Hi, I'm Jennifer Zollet.
And I'm Larkin Bell. Welcome to a bonus episode of A Female Lens. While we were at the Sundance Film Festival, we had the opportunity to talk with 2 virtual reality artists and 1 team about their virtual reality projects premiering at the New Frontier program at the festival.
First up is Melissa Painter with the project Embody. Then we chat with the team of Mechanical Souls. We chat with the director Gaëlle Mourre, writer LP Lee, and DP Céline Tricart. Lastly, we interviewed Teek Mach with her project Grisaille. Thank you so much for meeting with us. We're so delighted to chat with you. And yeah, we had never experienced a VR experience. Is that what you call them?
Yes.
Okay, cool.
I love that.
Okay. Yeah, this was our first one. That was incredible.
It was amazing.
But yeah, we've got some questions for you. So I guess just to start us off, for someone who knows nothing about VR, how do you explain it and what do you want them to know?
From a sensory standpoint, when you're inside a virtual reality headset, you are in a 360-degree space. And so that's novel because a lot of us have had our relationship with traditional media with flat rectangular screens, right, of all different scales now, but this is different in that way. I used to be a filmmaker, so for me, a bigger difference about it than that is that we build in real-time game engine. And so this project is built in a way where it's coded. There's nothing about it that's linear. So it's entirely driven by your own, as a user, your own interaction with it. And so to me, the thing that makes virtual reality very, very different than other media experiences and more like a game, but not exactly, is that fact that it's happening in real time, it's different every time, and it's interactive.
So if we did this again, would it be slightly different?
It would be completely different. I mean, if you decided to stand still, something else would happen. If you moved at a different pace, something else would happen. So it's interesting. For me, I started out as a traditional filmmaker, directing narratives. But even when I was doing that, I always liked shooting in real locations and looked for actors who brought a lot of authenticity to the performances. I moved to documentary, and I realized that I really liked making with real-world elements. Part of that is making with things that are always changing, that in some ways out of your control. And your job becomes to find the path, the story, the meaningful thing through all those pieces. So for me, the most profound thing about making in this space is that the last creative person who touches it is the user, not me. And I really enjoy that as a maker. It allows me to completely let go of that part of the process. But it also, I feel like, is an opportunity to create a media that allows people who don't necessarily live in a creative pursuit or do that for a living to have an authentically creative experience.
So I had a question about just how physical this experience was. You know, it's really related to our bodies and what we did. And I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about your experience with modern dance, or did you?
Yeah, so I had a dance practice and I managed a dance company for a while, always never as, my main job, but as something that matters in my life. And I also do a lot of yoga, and I'm married to someone who used to be a professional athlete. So, and you guys with the theater background, same thing, right? Like our body is our first creative tool. It's an instrument. I think that that's a really important thing for people to understand. I don't think you fully have a human experience if you don't have some sort of body knowledge. When kids are little, they come into the world as kinesthetic learners. They need to move to understand things. I don't think that changes throughout our lifetime. So one of the things that I find very sad about present day US is that a lot of people are very, very disassociated from their physical selves. And to me, a lot of that is because of technology. I mean, we're so wrapped into our two-dimensional screens and the pace at which they're asking us to work that we've really stepped back from the real wisdom that comes from some of those traditions. And so for me in this space, one of the other things I really love about spatial computing is the idea that it's an opportunity to reframe our relationship to technology and to remember that the body has a role. It's interesting. I'm not, there are a lot of dancers and architects who are turning to this space for this, and immersive theater makers for the same reason, because I think we all understand that actually those skills have a lot of impact in this space. Another thing which is super interesting to me is that humans understand, just biologically, we understand a lot from movement. Our ability to read movement and decide, is someone happy or angry? Is that my son or my husband? From even just 3 data points. If you imagine a data point coming off each joint on your body, a human can recognize a lot of that meaning just from 3 data points, like one elbow, one knee, one, earlobe. And that's crazy. It's because we've got so much biology that's driven us to be able to read those signals. And so I'm really interested in trying to awaken that part of the human.
Could you talk about the use of nature in this experience? I thought that was really interesting. I wasn't expecting to be surrounded by nature, I guess, in virtual reality.
Again, as a maker, have always really liked to make out of real world things, and nature and natural imagery has played a dominant role in a lot of the things that I've made in my lifetime. In Game Engine right now, I'm really interested in the way in which we can create movement and animation and patterns that actually feel really organically natural. Without trying to duplicate the thing. Like, I'm not trying to make the metaverse or say we never need to see a real tree. But I do believe that it's very beautiful and interesting that some of these, in theory, artificial spaces can actually start to have some natural behavior. And I also really am just not someone who likes what a lot of people would call like a dominant game aesthetic. I really prefer an aesthetic that touches back to the real world and echoes the real world. And then I guess the last thing about it is, there's a lot of, I would say, fear on the side of people who celebrate the natural world that technology is one of the things that's really disassociating people from it. But I would say, so is living in cities. There's a lot about contemporary society that disassociates people from nature. And it's not just that everyone's staring into a cell phone. So I like the opportunity for technology to give me, at least, the feeling that I have when I'm standing at a beach. And I think, that's something, it is the flat out truth that that's something some people just can't get to.
Can you explain what Game Engine means?
Yes. So we build with a game engine called Unity Technologies. And a game engine is an in real time system that's like the platform that we're building on. So a lot of the AAA game companies have their own game engines. Really what it is like, think of it as like the infrastructure that allows the code that makes up an experience like this to deliver these in real time moments. And what in real time means that it can change instantaneously, that those pixels are coming together just in that way, just for that moment. There's a lot of other mechanics to it, but that's, so on my team, we have a lot of people who are working in Engine, but they're working at it from different directions. We've got really, really strong, smart engineers who are doing the code writing part of it. And then we've got really talented 3D artists who are doing that side of it. And those two things meet in the middle inside that engine.
So we read that your undergraduate degree was in ancient Greek. You've been a filmmaker. How did all this lead you to become interested in virtual reality?
When I was studying ancient Greek, which is what I did as an undergrad, I was studying it because I wanted to be able to read Homer and the tragedies in the original. And the reason I wanted to be able to read them in the original is that a lot changes in translation. And the reason I was drawn to them is actually I thought I wanted to grow up to be an actor. And I was really interested in looking at the dawn of storytelling and theater as a culture building tool, which is what it was. Greece believed that theater had medical reasons. So do I, right? This whole idea of catharsis, et cetera. So At the time, though, I knew, I mean, I wasn't trying to grow up to be a professor. I knew that I wanted to turn to the arts, but I sort of wanted a core base knowledge in where some of these ideas had come from. The other thing, and then I went into film and loved it, but around 6 years ago, I was given the opportunity to step in to lead a lab that was working in immersive, and I had never run a job that even had engineers on it. I mean, I have to tell you, it was like a huge shift, and it was actually a very, very important large job with a very large budget. And I would get on these conference calls with 17 engineers on them, and I would, like, in theory, be leading the call, and I would not understand a word out of anyone's mouth. Like, I'm not even a word. And I used to sit there and think, like, how many of these am I going to sit on before any of it makes sense? And then there were a couple things that clicked. 3 things. One, I realized it was right back, like being at the beginning of when film was invented, which is something that I'd studied. I'd studied the invention of silent film and thinking about, like, what an important moment that was and how many decisions got made about what this is for and who's it for and who gets to tell stories and who gets to direct, not that many women, et cetera. And then the other thing is that in ancient Greek, Homer it's an oral tradition. So it's a story made by many authors, told in a shared space over a long time. And I really believe that there's a power in collective storytelling, and that single authorship things, which is what a lot of films have become, are actually not that great for society. And so when I realized that this was a space that was alive in those kinds of ways, that was like theater, that was like documentary, that was like Homer, it was like, okay, I think this is the moment. It's the first time in my life I've thought I was at the right place at the right time.
Your feature film, Steal Me, premiered at Sundance back in 2005. What are you most excited about for this year's festival and your VR project?
So the first time I went to Sundance was in 1992.
Oh my gosh.
With a short film. And from that, I was invited into the director's lab, and that's how I got to make my first feature. And then I've been there. Steal Me was the last film that I premiered there, and then I've been there 2 other times with immersive work. For me, Sundance is many things. It's a community that I feel deeply at home in and really believe in as having been an incredibly important cultural force. It's also, for me with immersive, a time when I get to see the work of my colleagues and am, deeply inspired by it. And traditionally, it's always just a place where people who are looking for the edge of storytelling and storytelling that has values at its core show up. And so it's fantastic in that way. The people who curate New Frontiers are brilliant. And so it's also just exciting to see, what's there. This year, it feels like there's going to be a lot of things. Shari who's the chief curator, has been talking a lot about biometric inputs, et cetera. And that's something that's really interesting to me. So I'm excited to see how that's turning up in other people's work.
You spoke at the beginning about you give up the control, right? That the person, the user is actually having the final say kind of in how they experience it. Do you still have an idea though of what you want them to leave with and what you want them to get out of what you're examining through this work? Or is it really just up to them and how they experience it all?
There's always a feeling that I hope they will leave with, and sometimes more than one feeling, but it's not much more directive than that. And so in the case of this experience, the feelings I was hoping someone would leave with are, 1, just to remember that their body is a creative tool. And 2, I wanted them to physically feel a little bit different in their body. And then to think, wow, I just stepped out of an experience between me and technology that actually left me physically feeling different.
There was something so cool about that where you experience the whole thing on your own. But then the end, I was like, oh yeah, I am touching another person.
And like the power of that touch was so different than if I had just been like, hey, Jennifer, give me a high five, because you don't quite know what to expect, even though you know exactly what that's going to be. You know what somebody else's hand feels like when you reach out to touch them, but it's the anticipation and not really knowing and then experiencing that, and like the pressure was so much stronger than I was expecting.
I was like, is this your hand?
We were both like really pushing into each other's hand, and there was such an energy in that was really surprising.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
Well, for me, this whole piece is about energy, right? The energy that's in our bodies, the energy that's in the natural world, and the energy that we pass between us, and that's what the project is about. So I'm glad that's what you took away from it. That's awesome.
Great. Thanks so much for chatting with us.
Absolutely. You guys were very, very well prepared with lovely questions.
Oh, thank you. Well, you taught us so much. We learned so much, and we're excited to experience more virtual reality and that story. Yeah, that way of storytelling. It's fascinating.
Awesome. Well, we have lots someday. Come back. There's other stuff we'd love to show you.
I'm Gaëlle Mourre. I'm the co-writer and director of Mechanical Souls.
I'm LP Lee. I'm the co-writer and had the concept.
And I am Céline Tricart. I was the cinematographer of Mechanical Souls.
So if we could just hear a little bit about the genesis of this idea and how you all came to work together and then collaborate to make this a reality.
Initially it started off its life as a short story set in South Korea. And I was really curious about how we navigate different social expectations, and also thought it would be very fun to add a robot to the mix. And Gaëlle and I started talking about this project a few years ago, and we were interested in seeing different ways we could take the story, different contexts. I had been a bridesmaid in Tianjin in China a few years ago. It was not in any way traumatic like the potential murder mystery of our series, but it gave me the idea of the setting of having a luxurious Chinese hotel.
Yeah, and so we thought it would be really fun to explore this story and give it a sort of satirical thriller tone. And as we all came together, LP Lee, you'd lived in Beijing and you'd spent a summer in Taiwan. I had grown up in Singapore, and we teamed up with French producers and Taiwanese co-producers, so we thought it would be great to set it in Taiwan where the core themes of the story could really come forward.
The French production company got in touch with me because I have a long track record in being a DP specialized in virtual reality. And I had a film last year at Sundance that they saw, and so they put me in touch with Gaëlle first, because we only met actually in Taiwan, I think. And Gaëlle had a discussion. We met for the first time at the Cannes Film Festival, face to face, and had a discussion. And then Gaëlle wanted to have a very sleek, very dramatic look, which talked to me because I'm not too much into the French style of cinematography. I'm more into very strong colors, strong shadows, directional lighting, and that's also what Gaëlle wanted. So then we decided to work together on this.
Yeah, I remember we also specifically connected on using color. Using color as a means of communicating a mood, and I thought that was really exciting and really cool because I'd wanted to do that for a really long time.
Yeah, for example, there is two things happening in the same room, and including the last scene of the first episode, which I'm not gonna say what it is because you have to find it for yourself. But we changed slightly the saturation of the main color, which was red, of the scene, from an orangey for the first scene to a more violent red for the last scene. And it's kind of subtle, but it kind of tells you what state of mind the character is in.
Can you also talk about the way that you combined both theatrical elements and the VR elements together as part of the experience? That's definitely something I noticed.
So just to reiterate, you mean like theatrical as in
like theater, like life, like because you are introduced as kind of part of the world, and there's actors in the room that kind of introduce the whole piece. So I'm curious, where was that choice always a part of it, or did that kind of come about as you kept working on it?
So originally the piece was conceived as purely a VR film, and then as we were preparing for our release and we were preparing to hopefully come to Sundance, and yay, we made it, we thought about how to best engage with the audience and how to really immerse them within the story world. So that's when the idea came forward to create an immersive piece. And so LP Lee and I wrote the script for the interactive piece in strong collaboration with our producers. So we all thought about how to best engage with the audience, how to really get them to talk about their different experiences, because this is an interactive film that uses gaze tracking technology, which means that the viewer is not necessarily aware that they are choosing their own adventure, essentially. So the goal was to make sure that they realized that they hadn't all seen the same storyline, and that whilst they had seen the same last scene, they might understand it differently according to what they had previously seen.
It was really fun thinking about expanding the story world and having audience members come in as new employees of MechLife, this slightly shadowy android company. And yeah, it was really fun working with Gaëlle and the producers to figure out how to expand it, and creating a MechLife org chart, and giving more little hints about where the story can go.
Yeah, it's kind of like, childhood games when you start thinking of a vast world within your own mind, and it was really great that we actually just got to implement it and really run wild with it. Really fun.
I just want to know what your experience has been like at the Sundance Film Festival. Is this your first time attending the festival, and how has it been for you?
Celine is a veteran.
All right, I'll start. This is my 5th Sundance, and the second time was a film in the official selection. Like I said, last year I had a VR film I produced and directed. So it's funny. So we'll see what they say. But the fact that it's my second time with a film in the selection makes it so much more laid back, because I kind of know what's going to happen, and I just know that the stakes are very high, obviously, but also the simple fact of being selected is already huge. So congratulations, and I think everybody was just really putting everything they had into this premiere, with the actors, with the performance, really trying to push the envelope, And I think we can say that after the first weekend of Sundance, this is probably the number 2 or number 1 most talked about VR piece at the festival. And when I say, oh yeah, I worked on Mechanical Souls, everybody's like, oh yeah, I've heard about it. So the fact that we try to do not just VR but expand on it is really paying off, in my opinion.
For Gaëlle and I, it's our first time here, so really excited, and it's been such like a nice atmosphere. I think everyone's been so welcoming, really nice. I'm also quite unfamiliar with the States, so it's really exciting seeing American culture as well, and it's been really fun.
As LPD mentioned, it's our first time at Sundance. It's also our first VR film experience, everything, a lot of firsts, and it's really amazing to be at Sundance, to be surrounded by all of these really creative, thoughtful and bold projects. And it is a huge stamp of approval, so it's really a massive boost, and it's incredibly exciting. Coming here, I didn't really expect anything specific, so I feel like the stakes are very high, but the pressure is also off, because everyone in the team knows exactly what they're doing, and so we can all focus on our roles and ultimately enjoy the experience.
Awesome. Yeah, we've learned a lot about VR since coming to Sundance. We got to experience some of the different ones. What are you most excited about in the VR space moving forward?
So it's been, I don't know how many years VR has been at Sundance, probably 5 or 6. But I can see the difference. Every year it's getting better and better and more immersive and more emotional. This year I've tried a lot of different ones, and I was blown away by the quality of everybody's work. I start seeing some things we're mixing, just kind of what we're doing with live performance and VR. Other people are doing augmented reality mixed with performance, and it's kind of like this intersection of different technologies and different realities that I felt that suddenly everything comes to life, and we have finally reached a point where we can say virtual reality has gotten out of tech demo mode into an art form.
I don't know as much about VR as Céline, so I'm very much a newbie. But from what I've seen so far, it seems really diverse. Like you've got poetry happening with the 7 stages of man, and there's visual art and artists who've turned to becoming a VR artist. There's just so much stuff happening. It's just really exciting to see what can happen next.
Yeah, there's a real convergence of so many different paths and disciplines who are all coming together in this one space. It's really cool to see how we all have different paths and different experiences. It's also very exciting to see that tech and science and art form are all coming together into these experiences.
Awesome. Thanks so much for joining us and sharing your thoughts. We really enjoyed the experience.
Thank you very much.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
My name's Teek Mach. I'm the creator of the project Grisaille that's premiering at New Frontier at Sundance Film Festival 2019.
Can you tell us about the genesis for the idea behind Grisaille and what you were examining throughout the piece?
Yeah, so I started painting in virtual reality 2 years ago, and just ever since I started working in the medium, it's really shifted my idea of self, and it's really made me want to kind of observe the what it means to what our experience is, and VR has given this amazing outlet of sorry, let me okay, so Grisaille kind of evolved from the way that I was taking people into my virtual paintings, and I started painting in my 300 square foot studio apartment, and it would be these really intimate moments whenever I would invite people over. By proxy of the equipment, because of the setup and the sensors, I had to invite people over if they wanted to see the work, and I noticed that there was such an intimate connection there, that they were in the space that I had been creating, and that they were able to, I was able to share my mind with them. And so, I've been looking at all the different outlets for the way that people can view VR work, and I didn't think that because my paintings were so personal, and because I started to design this exhibit or a space that was designed around the way that a person experiences. So so Grisaille begins the second you walk through the door, and it's actually your journey that you are going through. So the story actually begins with you going into this new thing, this headset that you have no idea what's going to happen. And I always hear about people's experience in VR, and I'm always heartbroken that they say that they're not into it because their first experience was in a mall and it was loud and it's embarrassing. Someone was taking pictures of them or something, and I thought about how important it was to design a space around the experience, and how important it was that my presence was there to really create that connection. And I wanted it to, because I had so much experience with self-reflection within the medium, because in VR you don't have a body, and it kind of shifted my idea of where I was, where my mind was, what the connection to my body was, and how ultimately what we feel inside is really all the same. We constantly move in and out of emotions kind of almost haphazardly. One minute I can feel sad, and another something might happen that may trigger me into a different mental state. And we're all especially with the way that I can center the viewer inside of a 360 experience, so the entire project is done in one shot, and you're moving as if you are a prisoner of time in a way, and that was really to reflect the kind of sense of isolation and kind of loneliness that I felt while I was creating, because kind of juxtaposed to me physically painting everyone, like creating this project, I had to spend thousands of hours in isolation. And because of that isolation, it really made me want to, I saw that because of these small connections of inviting people, that was really the value in doing it, was that even though I had spent so much time alone, it was making me connect. Like, it was by proxy, just was like everyone that would come inside. It was a way that technology was really bringing us together, and I saw it as such an incredible outlet for expression. Like, I think it's the ultimate artistic palette.
Is this your first Sundance? And if so, how has the whole experience been?
Oh my gosh, yes. This is my first time at Sundance, and it's fascinating. Especially because, because this project has to take place with people in a live space, in a live setting. So far, as of right now, I've painted 115 people into my collective painting. So it's really fascinating to not only just visualize that, but just to really be able to see the people create this painting, there's no way I could have practiced this. So it's kind of happened so organically, and it feels like it is growing a life of its own at this point. And it's because of the collection of people that have come through it that it is alive. So I'm excited to continue to watch it grow. And so this experience at Sundance has been fascinating because it proves to me that this is a medium that can connect us. I've had people, I've given so many hugs to people, after doing this very intimate painting, like tracing of their body, and allowing them to watch themselves float away and see all the vast other collection of people that have come through this. And I think that's, it's really, I love how that it's actually working, like what I think of the way that, like, I see the opposite occurring with virtual reality, where, like right now, its main point of use, and even how it was created has been for military purposes, and for specifically to separate us with war, by just turning us into killing machines. And if it has the power to do that, then that means it's so powerful with the mind. It has the ability to change you. And instead of using it to separate us, I think that means it has the equal amount of power to bring us together. So I really want to do that.
Thank you so much. It was such a joy talking with you and experiencing this experience. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, thank you for interviewing me. I'm excited for that you guys got to see it.
Thank you. You can find us at afemalelens.com and at afemalelens on Instagram and Twitter. You can email us at afemalelens@gmail.com. And you can download the show anywhere you listen to podcasts and on Apple Podcasts, where we'd love it if you left us a review.
Our theme song was composed by Jesse Nelson. Our logos are by Megan Cafferty. This podcast is produced by Jennifer Zollet and Larkin Bell.